Let's start with discussing forced relocation, and let's be clear, it isn't a good thing. As an American, the only thing that can make the Trail of Tears even more embarrassing is the fact that we put the guy responsible on the $20 bill. FDR got the dime because he only set up internment camps for Americans whose looks he didn't like. The only thing probably worse in this country's history than the treatment of Indians is slavery. Forcing someone to leave their homes is not a good thing. But let's also remember that what motivated the Indian Removal Act was simple racism. People used the law to try to get someone else's stuff all the time, but it was easy in this case because they were Indians. The motive in this case is far, far different. We can use the unique properties of this particular place to create a medical treatment to save billions of lives, like it helped Geordie get his sight back. The reason for this alliance with the Sona is that they have this technology, but the planet is in Federation space. We've seen how badly the Sona need it. Their appearance is because they're desperately trying to hold on to life until they can get the stuff from the rings. Oh, did I mention that the planet itself isn't the source, but the rings? And that the Sona are all dying?
Then the Sona can establish a separate colony on the planet until we do.
It would take 10 years of normal exposure to begin to reverse their condition. Some of them won't survive that long.
And that's why they're desperate to do this. And really, there's nothing the Baku are doing that actually gets in the way of that. The reason to remove the Baku is because once you use this tech on the rings, the Baku and anyone else on the planet would die, so it's to save them. It's kind of like damming a river to provide water and electricity for a city that would die without it, and then wanting to relocate the cluster of cabins downstream that would be affected by it. I'm not kicking you out of your house so that I can come and live there or rob it, but because what's happening elsewhere is going to affect you sooner or later. Now, it's certainly easy to understand the principle of not forcing someone off their land, because the last thing I would ever want is for the government to announce eminent domain and take away my house. But if I lost it because it was going to save lives on such a massive scale, well, I don't know if I could live with myself knowing so many died just so I could keep my house. How could the Baku then continue to pretend to be so enlightened if they choose their own longevity over the lives of countless people? That's why it's never asked of them directly, because there's no answer that will not make them look like selfish assholes. They would become just as much villains as the villains are, because they're so obsessed with their self-interest, no one else matters. So the only answer they could say to avoid that would be, yes, and so then the film's over. So we just have to not ask the question and hope nobody thinks about it. Yeah, that's a really great thing to do in a film that bills itself as cerebral. Let's hope nobody thinks about the gaping flaw in the story that makes the heroes look like douchebags. Now, are you ready for the best part? You know the idea that studios always come in and screw up everything? Executives have no idea what they're talking about, etc. Well, let me share a small part of a memo from Paramount to Berman and Piller about the script. We would like to better establish why the future of 600 Baku is so important. Currently, it is unclear why Picard is so passionate about the future of this particular race. The blood feud between a few hundred Sona and 600 Baku seems like nothing more than a gang fight. Numerous civilizations have been eliminated by previous Star Trek megalomaniacs, so what makes the Baku special? To be blunt, with only 600 people in the gene pool, the Baku would inbreed themselves into extinction in a few generations. What's interesting in this response is that this issue is pretty much just as unresolved after, even though it unwittingly paints the answer right there in the last sentence. The longevity of the Baku is what's keeping their species alive. If you remove them, Picard could then argue they'd be wiping out the species because they don't have the numbers for a sustainable population. But instead he frames it in terms that come across far more abstractly. The Baku will not die out because of demonstrable scientific facts, but an implication that they will suffer a cultural extermination in parallel to other forced relocations under entirely different circumstances. Fighting to prevent the Federation from committing slow-motion genocide, that's a bit more understandable and clear-cut than this approach, which portrays it as a personal opinion rather than definitive fact. The mistake with Janeway and Caretaker occurred when the desire to show this woman is the captain wound up making her look like either an idiot for missing the obvious or lunatic for pretending that she's stranding them on purpose when she has no actual way of getting them home. The attempt to make her look better inadvertently makes her look worse. Likewise, the attempt to make Picard look like a man fighting for his principles winds up making him look like a hypocrite. Oh yes, I've got even more to ramble about.
How many people does it take, Admiral, before it becomes wrong? 1,000? 50,000? 1,000,000? How many people does it take, Admiral?
Dougherty finally just orders Picard to piss off to his next assignment, and so Picard begins removing his rank pips. He's going to fight to protect the Baku. So let's see. If the Federation is prepared to form an agreement with another government over a Federation planet without the consent of its inhabitants, and plans to either relocate them against their will or maybe just let them stay to be killed, the Federation has betrayed its principles and you must take off your pips and fight, even if it will save lives to go ahead with things as planned. Tell me, why didn't Picard file a protest to force the Cardassians to let Federation colonies in the DMZ stay as part of Federation space, Why is it that when he was ordered to forcibly remove people, he only sighed for a long, long time until he finally got permission to only let them stay, but not actually remain within the Federation? Why is it that when those colonists were being killed by Cardassians, he was silent? Why is it that when those colonists formed a group to fight back, without even involving the Federation, he chose to join up on the side against them, try to infiltrate and undermine them, rather than rushing into the zone, guns blazing to save them? Because of the peace treaty, which wouldn't even save a fraction of a percentage of the amount of people this medical treatment would save. You still sided against the Maquis fighting to defend their homes over a peace treaty that wouldn't even keep the peace, Picard. Tell me, how many innocent colonists dying does it take, Captain, before it becomes wrong? So Picard gets a whole slew of weapons, despite the Baku stating they didn't want to use them, plus that whole technophobia thing. Violence and technology are the embodiment of everything we despise. But when in Rome, eat lasers, prune face. The rest of our heroes have noticed what Picard's up to and are unequivocally behind him. There is no one who offers any dissent. In fact, Data speaks up to tell the audience that this is all correct because any sensations of youthfulness and flaming rebellious desires wouldn't affect him, and he thinks it's so good he'll spit out trailer fodder lines that are about as natural and believable as an aluminum Christmas tree.
Saddle up. Lock and load.
Set phasers on maximum cliché. Picard's plan is to send the Enterprise to plead with the Council on the Baku's behalf, with Riker and Geordi handling that task because, coincidentally, they're the only two wearing their uniforms, while everyone else is dressed in regular clothes. Ruafo makes another appearance. He's been shown up here and there to metaphorically cackle and twirl his mustache for 30 seconds and then leave. Now's the first time he seems to actually be doing, well, anything menacing besides ooze on Picard's rug. He reschedules the relocation for the morning up a good few hours. Damn you! The way you flagrantly make adjustments to timetables. Your evil knows no bounds! Anyway, Picard and the crew arrive in the Baku village with news of how the day will be saved. We will not allow anyone to take you from your homes, your village, your way of life. You will be allowed to remain here no matter what anyone says. Now, pack your shit up. We're leaving. We will not allow them to corrupt your vision of a life free from technology and violence. Now, let's set up these transport inhibitors and follow the instructions of the android while my people get the guns and bombs in position. The Sona launched their attack, damaging some of the inhibitors so that some of the Baku, including Mike Brady, will get beamed away, leaving the kid without his dad. But the rest of them all get away. Rafu wants to send in an assault team, but the Admiral's hesitant. So the bad guy finally gets to have his say almost an hour into the film.
Look in the mirror, Admiral. The Federation is old. In the past 24 months, they've been challenged by every major power in the quadrant. The Borg, the Cardassians, the Dominion. They all smell the scent of death on the Federation. That's why you've embraced our offer. Because it will give your dear Federation new life.
The alternative to the assault team would be special tags that would allow them to beam out a colonist once they were tagged. But because of the Enterprise, they wouldn't have time unless it was stopped. Given the choice between attacking the Baku or attacking the Enterprise, the Admiral grudgingly agrees to the latter. On the planet, Worf gets some more time to be the butt monkey.
Accelerated hair growth is often experienced by Klingons during Jactala.
Lucky bastard. Instead of hair, he gets to live in slow-mo. It looks like the briar patch must be located within the Matrix. The rest of the crew have more important things on their minds.
And have you noticed how your boobs have started to firm up?
This, of course, leads to one of Data's more infamous gags.
And have you noticed how your boobs have started to firm up?
If one of the male Klingon signs of puberty is gynecomastia, I'm walking out. The Sona arrives, so it's time for another action sequence. It's a rare film where the bad guys are using harmless tags to capture people, while the good guys are using exploding laser blasts. The Baku are led into some caves while our heroes blast at the probes, and for the second film in a row, Worf resorts to using his phaser as a club. It's the Klingon way, I'm sure. Many songs will be written of this day. A Klingon man is a soaring soul, as free as a charging tug. With an energetic yell, he is ready to compel a bad guy to yell, "Arg!" His nose should pimple and his lips should scout, his ridges gleam and his odor foul. His boobs are firm and his hair should grow, and his phaser ever ready for a knockdown blow.
Definitely feeling aggressive tendencies, sir.